So we had some success, but we learned that really you have to pay attention to this broader context. You know, if like in a serious recession, you need to take on board the pressures on business as much as you do on yourself, that you're both existing in the same bath, as it were. Incredibly long-term process. And really the process of gaining sponsorship is the same process as gaining friends and keeping them. And you have to take on board what their lives, what everybody is going through in their life and their organisation. And it's very difficult to do fundraising on a percentage, because actually a conversation and relationships that you are building 1 year may not come good till 2 years later. And so somebody just working on a percentage, it's too long a period to wait until any money comes in. And it's a real dilemma, but we just discovered that was the fact of the matter. Also, it's very easy to think that somebody in a big business is very sorted, powerful, etc. But often the person who has a responsibility for external relations is very overwhelmed, unsupported. And so actually it's very good to be, it sounds cheesy perhaps, but compassionate for the person that you may be trying to get the attention of, and to just really imagine what their life is like. And we discovered that the people working in the businesses actually had fewer colleagues, fewer people to talk to than we did in our own organisation. The other thing is also to look for personal reasons. The commercial reasons have to be right, but you will always find a second personal reason for somebody saying yes. And indeed, they will need that in order to be an advocate for sponsoring any particular cultural organisation with their colleagues. And usually it's that they were passionate about the arts before they found that way of working, or their children or their husband or wife are passionate about these things. Or they may be wanting to leave business and work in the arts. There's always a personal reason underlying somebody who is prepared to dedicate a conversation to this effort. But it is an almost impossible job. It is an impossible job. So you have to make it kind of fun and interesting, really, to keep your own motivation going. You're competing with other demands for funding. So let alone the straight business reasons, there's sport, there's, elephants or pandas or, wildlife issues or more social, worthy social issues. So there's lots of competing things. It's very tricky fitting with the corporate plan. So the timing's too long or too short. Matching up your timetable with theirs is a very problematic thing. And that's why you have to keep talking for the moment when it coincides. Also, the LIFT programme was very uncertain. So I might be promoting a production 1 week and then suddenly it will have dropped out of the programme. So because you're the bridge between these two worlds, you're walking a very, very fragile, uncertain bridge. And there are challenges outside our control. So in response to these huge uncertainties, we decided to invent some schemes that were connected to the programme within the spirit and values of LIFT, but at one remove from the uncertainties of the programme. So we invented something called the International Dinner Series. And there was also a strategic reason for this, in that it was positioning us quite in a quite influential place. And the idea came to us because we said, what are we good at? Bringing talent from somewhere else to create a kind of feeling of enjoyment. And so we knew that we wanted to bring a production from Russia, and so we persuaded our chairman. At that time, he was chairman of Sotheby's, the auction house, and they had just opened an office in Moscow. And so we said, why don't you host a dinner for us? And he said, okay. And I said, how about if it's cooked by Russian chefs? And so we then had to identify some independent chefs who weren't, the official state chef. And we did that through the British Embassy. And then we arranged for the chefs to come, and we took them to some restaurants so that they were also learning from English chefs, and then they cooked this banquet. I then researched with the Department of Trade and Industry the companies who were doing trade with Russia, and we invited the chairman and the Russian ambassador and arts people. And we then persuaded a few, sadly not all, of the business people who came to become corporate members. So we had a modest funding scheme that they became corporate members of our organisation. So, but also the public sector was so impressed with this dinner, we were able to call on them in an emergency to suddenly give us some more funds because some others hadn't come through or something. So we were playing the private and the public together, riding both horses. We also did a similar one with Hungary for the Katon József Theatre, and then we also did one for our education scheme, where actually the dinner was cooked by students, and we gave them a bursary with the French embassy to go and study in France. So the values of what we were doing in the artistic program were followed through in what we were doing in the fundraising. And that's an important thing to bear in mind. It's a creative and social act as much as the artistic program. So ideas flow from the art, and humour helps. And you also need to enlist power to engage others. So you need to enlist some powerful people. So this scheme was an individual giving scheme. So I've talked about the commercial sponsorship. I've talked about a scheme at one remove from the main programme. And this was a kind of emergency individual giving scheme. A grant didn't come through at the last moment to stage this production by British company's Station House Opera about the French Revolution. And it was of 8,000 breeze blocks moving over 5 days. And it was a show about the power of the individual to change history. So we